But one of the things that you're centering on in immigration is a problem we have with economic development in this country, and the jobs are moving offshore. The one criticism I would have is that immigration is not the sole reason, and you need to also consider tax implications of business, and the two of them working hand in hand together.
Yes.
And we need to be sure that we look at the overall, because taxation and the taxation rules, especially for corporations, if you've ever had to fill out a corporate tax form versus the 1040, you know what a pain in the rear end that form is, even more so than the 1040. I think we need to be able to look at reform on multiple fronts and not just center solely on immigration, that we need to look at taxation in terms of business, also regulation, where it makes it restrictive. The federal government now, thanks to the EPA, can garnish wages of individuals and to impose fines. It all points to an overreaching of the statist government. And I think we need to, as we look at this, look at the overall picture and not focus just on one segment. That was just a comment that I had based on what you talked about today.
Yes, I agree with that. And still, I'm trying to put this in the bigger picture. And when we talked about political issues, every political issue is about giving more power to the government, whether we will oppose the federal government, and you know, giving more power to the government and oppose the federal government becoming that tyrant. And I agree with you. It's not just immigration. I mean, like I said in one place, you can't change one thing only, and we don't look at one factor only. I was only showing that immigration actually, even if you keep everything else not there, immigration will still produce outsourcing. Immigration restrictions will produce outsourcing because these entrepreneurs, these employers are looking for these people. And if these people come into the economy, then the economy naturally wants them. They wouldn't come here if they don't know that they're going to find the jobs. You know, and that's why. But yeah, you're right. I mean, many other issues are embedded in that issue of giving more power to the government. I agree with that.
Your comment was that a lot of immigrants come to find jobs, but with the current socialism that we have in the government now, there are a lot of options for coming to the United States that don't include work, including welfare, WIC, free medical care, things like that. For a $1,300 ticket, anyone from Africa can arrive in America and get free AIDS treatment for the rest of their life. There are other factors involved now because of the socialistic tendencies of the government.
Again, what we're missing here is one very important thing. Okay, restricting immigration so that these people don't get access to that money. Okay, it's not going to decrease the waste. Remember, that money before that money went there to those immigrants. It was voted by Congress, and Congress normally does not make any account for where that money goes. Okay, so when they vote in Congress the spending, they're not thinking about these immigrants. Okay, so the next thing you got to remember, even if you stop all immigrants from coming, or even if you're able to perfectly screen those immigrants from coming, this is not going to decrease the waste. You're still going to be taxed at the same level, and Congress will still increase the debt burden of the U.S. government. So you got to think about this. So this is something that they show you these immigrants as the reason, but the real reason, the real border crisis, is not on the border between Texas and Mexico. It's on the border between Virginia and Maryland. That's the real border crisis. So when you say these immigrants are doing that, you're actually complaining not about more expenses on the taxpayer. You're complaining about how the money that has already been stolen from the taxpayer, why does it go to these people and doesn't go to some other greedy, our own American homeborn bureaucrat or welfare recipient. This is what you're complaining about.
No, I'm not complaining. What I'm stating is there are other reasons for people to come here other than to work. Because of the social system we have now, that no one fails.
Yeah.
So I just met an immigrant just recently, and I do evangelism with these immigrants and feed them as well. But I will tell you, I met an immigrant just recently who was a big American success story. But he had 27 operations on the United States government, on the taxpayers. His mother was on welfare his whole life. He was on welfare. And this is a success story from 14 years ago that came here from Honduras.
I just shaved an immigrant this morning that didn't take one penny of American welfare. So
you're not addressing my thing.
Okay,
my question
let me finish. I was about to address your thing.
But
okay.
My question is, there is another draw besides work. If people coming to work, we agree with.
Okay.
We don't have any difference there. The difference is we have a social system that's set up to create a subculture of people who live off of the government. And other people from all around the world will access that. That's certainly better than any life that they have where they're coming from.
Okay, is that the problem with immigration, or is that a problem with the social system? Okay, so why are we talking about it in a study about immigration? No, it's not both. All right, let me continue this. Okay. Now let me ask you this. Given that we have restrictive immigration laws, and given that those restrictive immigration laws are actually controlled by the trade unions, and given by the fact that the trade unions will always want to limit exactly the kind of people that would be a competition to the trade unions, people who are lower middle class and want to work, can you answer the question why you see most of the immigrants being people who are on welfare and not lower middle class, honest, decent workers who will go and work? The reason is you see more of these people that you're presenting to us. The reason is because the government stops the good people from coming in. So your solution is not to stop people from coming in. The solution is let people travel freely, and you will have more decent people coming in. I'll give you another example. In 2003, I was at a libertarian conference, speaking at a libertarian conference up in Lithuania. And I had a friend at the time. I haven't talked to him for many years, but he is an American billionaire who is a self-made man. He's single. He is one of those that made the early databases that put online and started selling them and so on, you know. The ones that actually access your email and start sending you, you know. It's still legal, so he does it. He made billions out of it. So he opened an office. He had a foundation and so on. He had an office in Moscow, okay? And he had a lady in Moscow who was 30 years old, and he liked her. And they're not Christian, but he wanted to marry that woman. And she was really beautiful, and she had 3 degrees, and she has never been on welfare and so on. So he wants to get her to Oregon, where he lived, and he sends her an invitation from himself personally, from his company, and from his foundation. So she's got 3 invitations by 3 places that have enough money to support her, and she'll never be on welfare, plus the fact that she speaks several languages and she is educated and so on. So even if she stays in the United States, do you think it's going to be a draw on the economy, or do you think it's going to be a gain to the economy? It's going to be a gain to the economy, right? So she goes to the American embassy, to the American consulate in Moscow, and they refuse her a visa. This is your government bureaucrats, okay? And they refuse her a visa. And he says, he calls them, and he says, I mean, he's a man with money, so he doesn't take no for an answer right away. So he calls the consulate and asks the very lady that refused that lady visa, the American bureaucrat. And she says the following, the words, well, she's young, she's beautiful, she's smart, she speaks languages, and she has great employment prospects. I cannot let her go. She's a potential immigrant. And his question was, so is this your policy to keep America stupid and ugly and unemployed? And she said, that's our policy. So, if you see those people that come through the borders and actually immediately go on welfare, and you don't see the other kind of people that are smart, educated, have great employment prospects, and have never been on welfare, maybe the reason is we have restrictive immigration laws, and the federal government enforces them. You will always have that kind of people crossing the borders. You will always have that kind of people going everywhere, whether Mexicans or Americans. You will always have, I mean, you go to places like Iowa or Michigan, and you don't have too many Mexicans there, but you have local white people, Anglos, that are on welfare exactly the same way as the Mexicans. Born and raised here in the United States, 10th-generation American, and is still on welfare. I mean, you have people here in the States about it, but the problem is, when you have restrictive immigration laws, you will only get what the federal bureaucrats want you to get, and you will not get the decent people that may help you turn the things around. This is reality. So this is why you don't have these kind of people. Yes?
Yes, on the note of border security, I think what we have to do is do something that's right. And I compare it to my little boy taking him fishing, and I read this in a book once. Imagine it's not fishing season yet, but we're getting ready, and it starts in 3 hours. 3 hours we can legally catch fish. And my boy throws his rod out and he casts, and he pulls the biggest bass we've ever seen. And I go, "Hey, son, that's a beautiful fish, right?" And he's like, "Yes." "You ready to put it back in the water?" And the point of that story is, sometimes you have to do what's right and what's wrong. And I think where Carl was going is the fact that obviously we do have border security issues. In Brownsville, there's a couple of ranchers who have found documents that show that it's not just people from South America and Central America coming into the country. There's folks who are coming in from Middle Eastern countries. So there's some security risk. But obviously the system is broken completely. It's our welfare state. I have to agree with you, Bo, that we just can't do continuously.
We're thinking the wrong way here. We're talking about criminals here, people that are proven criminals because let's say they're terrorists. We're thinking, and then we confuse this with the issue of immigration. But let me tell you why we have those criminals. Because if the government was a biblical type of government, it would focus on the criminals, and try to identify the criminals, which is way less money and less resources than stopping whole masses of people, because among them you may have a few criminals. Okay. Why is, and I like to give this example, why is the Israeli airline, El Al, the most secure airline in the world? Do they have all the TSA regulations and getting all the people through that and multiple? No, they actually have a very small force of workers. But what they do is they focus on people they know are risk people. They do not try to control masses of people, because that will mean a lot of resources. But America is wasting a lot of resources controlling masses of people, when actually the government is supposed to focus on the criminals. And that's biblical, because biblically, if you know somebody is a criminal, he's a criminal. And this is not an immigration issue, it is a crime issue. But a crime issue is not. We have fused the two, and we have taken the criminal, and we have attached the image of the criminal on the image of the immigrant, and we look at the immigrant and we say he's a criminal now, and this is illegal, this is wicked, and this is not biblical, and this is not constitutional, and it has nothing to do with the original American spirit. Oh, yeah.
I just wanted to add in a couple of pieces of information, and you can process them however you'd like. But part of my job is to hunt for resources. And so there's two things about this welfare that I wanted to say. First, it's not as easy as it used to be to apply for public assistance, welfare, whatever you call it. You have to offer up several pieces of information now. It's not like it used to be. You have to give them everything from bank statements, and some states have even approved drug testing. And so it's not as easy. They can't just come across the border and run to the nearest Health and Human Services office. That's not how it works. Some of them may somehow get away with it, and the laws have to change then. The second piece of information that I want to share is that a lot of people pay taxes, and they pay taxes through the use of ITIN numbers that they apply through the Internal Revenue Service. So in my past jobs, when I was helping people fill out immigration forms, they would have to pay fines, but they also paid their taxes, and they would supply me with years of taxes that they've been paying out. And they do it by keeping manual logs of everything they earned, and they were able to add, subtract, multiply on their own to find out how much taxes they had to pay for that year. So just like they take, majority of them give back into our economy. So just want to include some of that information for y'all. Thanks.
Yeah. I'm not against, on your view on immigration, I'm not against an illegal immigrant, what do you want to call them, coming to this country. Now, if I see someone saying, like, I know a good example, I ask them, what are you doing? Well, I'm working. Do you give does the government help you out any kind of way? Like, no, nobody helps me out. Oh, so you're like a man. You're responsible. You take care of you and your family. You're a man. You're a responsible, grown adult. Man, I love you. I support you. If they come looking for you, I'll even hide you. Because you know what? You're coming here because you really want, in Spanish, le echas ganas. Le echas ganas. You just want to come here for a better life, but you don't ask for no one else. The way my parents came here. We didn't get nothing. They turned our light off, our water off. You know what I'm talking about? But we're alive. We're okay today. But instead, I can get a baseball. See, this is where I live. I can get a baseball. I love baseball. I can get baseball and throw it in any direction. And I can hit a house. In my neighborhood, the colonias. You know about the colonias, don't you? I live out there. Okay? In the colonias. I can get a baseball, throw it. I could hit an illegal immigrant. 5 houses at least. You know what I'm saying? Okay, now watch. This is what they say. Okay. You're born. You come here. Watch. We already know the whole thing. So you come here. You have a baby. Okay, that's it. Now that baby gets rights now. Okay. Now that baby's born. Now he gets insurance because he's a baby. That's what it is. In my neighborhood, my next door neighbor is legal. The person across the street is legal. Next door neighbor is legal. And then I think next door over there, good people, real good people are illegal, but they're hardworking people. Okay. So either way, so they get welfare, they get Medicaid. My sister, she can't get Medicaid. Okay. Now they get WIC. Watch. Now, if the kid needs to be about 5 years old and he pees in his bed, then he gets diapers. Now, if you ever go to the flea market and y'all see all these diapers out there, all right, what they say their kids are using the restroom and they're go ahead.
All right.
So I'm making a point. So what I'm saying is this: you're saying blame the bureaucrats, but wait a second. Sin is still sin, and on Judgment Day, that person will still be accountable for that sin, that lie that he told. The bureaucrats, yes, they pass laws, but if I were to lie and say that my kid wets his bed when he doesn't, if I were to lie and say my husband left me, so now I have to give me TANFs, a relief check is what they give them, that's still sin, and that's a responsibility. I'm for immigration. Come here, but don't ask for nothing. You scrape around the edge of the law. Like, the God's law is perfect. They asked Jesus,
all right, we already answered that question, and the answer to that question is that the solution to this is not to restrict immigration, which is anti-biblical. The solution to this is to repeal and completely destroy the welfare system. Okay, so we're making here the
I got one point to make on the law. You're going around the law. If you would go to the essence of the law, then you're going to grab Christianity is what you're going to do in the law and not around the law, because you go around the law and the Christian thing to do is immigration, but the greatest law is love the Lord your God with all your heart, and yet we don't want nothing to do with God. We're scraping the surrounding. Grab the essence of the law. You know, that's my point. That's my view, that you're going around it when if you could go straight forward. We're taking Ten Commandments out of school, out of the courts. We don't want to do like atheism, like you said. We're going around it. That this immigration thing is small. It's peanuts, man. Give it a year, then you'll have a little problem. Give it 2 years, then you have a big problem. But right now, this is nothing, though. Oh.
I understand our problem, and that we need to change the law. what I'm asking you, to be a part of the solution, what do you suggest we do? Do we contact the bureaucrats, or what do we do?
This, I talked to Juan yesterday about it, and when you ask this question has two parts in it. Okay, you got to understand it has two parts. One is, what do I need to do right now, realistically, in this situation? And the other question is, if I was asked if I had the right, if I had the power actually to change things, what am I supposed to do? Now, if you had the power to change things right now, if your representative came to you and asked you, okay, it's your turn now, tell me what I need to do, and I'll do it. Your answer should be, repeal all immigration laws right away, no excuses, period. Just like with the prohibition 100 years ago. Okay, no excuses, repeal the prohibition laws, and the problem is going to go away, just like the problem never existed before we had those immigration laws to start with, because they're artificially. But then the other question is, what do I do realistically? Of course, my representative's not going to come and ask me, because my representative is taking his information, even if he's a Republican, he's taking his information from the Democrat National Convention, not from me. Okay, because look at all the so-called conservatives in Congress. I mean, how do they act? Do they act like conservatives? No. Okay, so what you need to do is you need to start educating yourself about this, because so far it's been 20 years of self-conscious political liberal propaganda on conservatives to make them change their minds. Remember, in the 1980s, it was the conservatives that said, it was Reagan who said, doors, and the doors are open to everyone with the heart and the will to get here. Well, I wish I could talk like Ronald Reagan. You know, he had a way with words. You know, but it is, but we need to start educating ourselves. We need to start re-educating ourselves on this issue, and start talking to other people and telling them this is the biblical solution, this is the American solution, this is the constitutional solution to the issue. Sorry, yes.
I'm going to try to clear a little bit of the, I guess, hypocrisy that we live in. I work in the construction business, and funny thing is that we got contracted to do a section of the border, and most of the people who working at the border were illegals. So, and we were making fun of it because we had this huge warehouse we rented, and we were doing all these pipes and all this stuff, and we were having a hard time finding people from here because it was hard work. And this is how bad the hypocrisy is. If you go to a lot of these federal buildings, a lot of these companies that are against this stuff, guess who's doing all the work? It's illegals. Now, I don't ask them because I don't have the right to say, are you illegal or not, because that's not part of my hiring process. And we don't have that right to say it, to ask it either. I just say, hey, do you know how to do this? Yes, I do. Go for it. You got a job. But I've been working on a project called Project Lotus, which I don't know if you know what a lotus is. That flower only grows in swamps. You know, no matter if you try to grow it in somewhere nice, it won't grow. It needs a swamp. Well, I've been following some of my workers that I know they're illegal. I just never asked them, but I know they are. I mean, I have a 99% chance they are. And these guys, because they receive no help. A lot of the issues with these illegals is that they start doing the bad thing because us as Christians, we leave them alone. We're not with them. We're not teaching them. We're not inviting them to church, teaching them the principles. There's a lot of good people that are illegal. There's a lot of working people that are illegal. I've been following these people, and the reason I call it Project Lotus is because I tell these people, look, as long as you don't get not one assistance from the government, I help you. I'll help you out. You need help, need tools, parts that I get from construction, I give them to you. Well, I have 3 samples of 3 families that I've been, especially one family, they have gotten help from no government. They've survived. He came by himself. His whole family's here now. He has a house. He got it with his sweat. He has cars, his own property. Not one symbol of assistance has he got. Now, what I discovered by this is that it's not that there's no work. It's just that people don't want to work in the jobs that we have available. And these guys are a sample that without no assistance, they have more than some people that were born here. So the corruption comes from here, I really think, not externally.
Okay. Do you think that the problem is one of because those people, I'm being facetious here, have a different color skin, they speak a different language. I was wondering what it's like on our northern border with the Canadians. Are they coming over by the millions and working illegally and doing all that? And we just ignore it because they look just like us.
It used to be. Let me tell you the situation. I had a question some time ago by somebody who said, well, these people come here, they don't speak our language, and they create their own pocket communities. And remember I told you about the Pat McCarn, the senator that advocated for this fascist law that was an admirer of Franco and 148. And this is the origin of our immigration laws, by the way. Every time keep this in mind. Our immigration laws were racist, fascist, and then socialist, and we're still in the socialist stage of our immigration laws. Okay. So anytime you come up with arguments for keeping the immigration laws today, you're either a racist or a fascist or a socialist, even if you don't realize it. Okay. But he was speaking about the Dutch people. Now, if you go back, because he didn't like the Dutch people for some reason, when you go back to the time of the war between the states in 1861 to 1864, 1865, you will see an interesting thing, that some of the northern commanders were complaining because their troops didn't speak English. Because they draw some of their troops from Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and some of their regiments were people who used to live in their communities. They didn't speak English. They spoke Dutch, they spoke Swedish, they spoke Norwegian, any other kind of language. They just speak English. And I had a friend who passed away just last year who grew up in a community where the services were in Swedish. He was Swedish, and his wife grew up in a community where services were in Norwegian. And it was just 40 years ago. And in America, it is for a very. It was not until government education actually took hold to start making everybody the same, and in fact, in Texas, forced Mexicans, Hispanics, speak English, that most of America started speaking English. All the way until probably the 1920s, English was the minority language in the United States. It was certainly the minority language in Texas because Central Texas, they spoke what language? German. It was German. Most of Texas spoke either Spanish or Indian languages or German. And French in Galveston, and English in some small places like Houston or Dallas wasn't even existing. Now, a good question was asked here about what do we do with the border and people crossing the border and owners on the border having their property violated by illegals who cross over into. Well, let me ask you this: if the entry in the United States was open, if you were an immigrant, where would you choose to cross the border? The bridge, right? Through the road. Who in their right mind will go through the desert? Yeah, okay. And if it was open, would you let's say, fly in with the airport or take a boat and paddle all the way from Cuba? Take an airplane, right? So the reason we have the violation of private property on the border right now is, again, the federal government. It's the loss of the federal government, because these people would have come over to work and would have gone back to their families through the border, wouldn't do all this violation of private property. This is what's happening. Now, if you go back in the history of Texas before 1921, what was the most economically developed area of Texas all the way until 1921, when Dallas was still a small town and Houston was a few swamps and few houses around these swamps? What was the most economically developed area? Where is the place in Texas where you have so many Scottish names, and we know Scots know where the economy grows? What's the name of this place here again? What's the place of the nearest place? Edinburgh. Why? Why did the Scots come here? This was the most developed area of Texas. Yes. This was the most developed area of Texas. What made this area so poor was the immigration laws of 1921. It started downhill from 1921 until our time. So that means, and that's everywhere. In Europe, where you have a border, and the border is open, this is the most prosperous place. The borders between Netherlands and Belgium, between Netherlands and Belgium and Germany, the borders between Germany and Poland, this is where the trade is. One country produces one thing, another country produces another thing. I mean, what's the normal thing? They meet at the border, they exchange things, they move on, right? And we have all this violation of liberties and economic poverty and so on the border exactly because of immigration laws. Yes, sir.
Are you for the idea of inoculations? I mean, our kids have to get shots to go to school. Should we have the same thing at the border with your idea of open borders? Now,
I am for quarantine. I'm not for inoculations. Okay. First of all, I don't know if inoculations really work, and second of all, you know, I need to people who are not vaccinated, you know, people who are supposed. You're talking about vaccination, right? Yeah. Okay. People that are vaccinated shouldn't be afraid of those that are not vaccinated. All right? Because if you're vaccinated, you're not getting. You know, so it should be personal choice. Now, concerning quarantine, this is biblical. Now, in the Bible, if you have a leper, that leper should be excluded from the community, and that's why Ellis Island was not an immigration facility; it was a quarantine facility. They kept the immigrants there, and that's New York City. You know, they kept the immigrants there for 2 weeks or more, waiting to see if there are any signs of any disease, and if there was not any disease, you could enter. So this is what they kept Ellis Island for. It was not for restricting immigration. You just sit there. Remember, there's pictures of people, you know, long benches, and they're all sitting there with their luggage and so on. You know, women and children from Europe, and you know, just waving American flags and all that stuff. This was quarantine facility, and quarantine facility is biblical. I agree with that. Okay, because you know there are places in the world that you know can have all kinds of infectious diseases that we don't want in the United States, and we want to do the best to limit them. But this is still not limiting immigration. You know. Yes, ma'am.
Hi. I wanted to go back to your biblical talk. And
yes, ma'am.
You mentioned, like, once the Jews had their own country and they welcomed people into their country. Oh, I'm sorry. They welcomed people into their country and got, you know, they could live where they wanted, they could work, they could, you know, raise their families. But I think you said that it was a couple of generations before they would be allowed to, like, be a part of the government. Am I correct in what you said?
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
And that, I mean, I relate that to I owned a business, and if I bring someone into my business that is new, I need to train them, and I need to teach them about what they need to do and how to, you know, sell to the customer. And I'm not going to put them in charge immediately. I am going to see, you know, and then bring them into management or whatever. And so, but I wanted to confirm what you had said there, because I think that's an important part of what's going on right now, is that we can't just bring these people in, even if they are someone who you know, has more skills and that sort of thing. They need to understand our system and our freedoms and that sort of thing before they can be part of the governing process. And I think that's so important.
Do we understand our system? How many of the laws do you understand? Of the 70,000 laws that are passed by Washington, D.C. every year, do we understand? So, I agree with that. And like I said several times, open borders, limited political franchise. Open borders, limited political franchise. See, for most people in the world, voting means nothing. Because they come from countries where voting means nothing. Yeah. I mean, anybody who's been in Mexico or Europe, hey, go to Britain, you can't get more civilized than them, and even their voting means nothing. Because you got two parties, and they're all just exchange. I mean, it doesn't matter what you vote, it's the same policy all the time. Now, we don't have that in America. It never happened in America. Whoa, wait. So pretty much the same thing everywhere. So they don't really care about voting. I really don't care about voting. You eventually get forced to get American citizenship after 5 years. The rules are, and I can tell you from personal experience, the rules are such that even if you don't want to be an American citizen, just live here freely and not have any political franchise, the government is kind of forcing you through the rules to get that political franchise. So my position would be open the borders for everybody who wants to come, limit the political franchise. Don't limit it on skin color basis, but limit it on the basis of, maybe it's going to take 10 years. Maybe it's going to take your children. Maybe it's going to take whatever you want to limit it. I mean, there are biblical guidelines that we can go to. But if we're talking about immigration, it's not the same as political franchise. As long as immigration is concerned, let people go. Let people free to go. Because, like I said, we're still at a point where the government is limiting the outsiders. But I lived in a country where the government was limiting insiders. And it might not be far for us here. So this is the point. Yes, sir?
The problem is the motivations with the motivations of those who are wanting more and more immigrants and wanting amnesty immediately is the motivation of getting them the political power and voting.
Well, but we're not going to help the process by helping them by insisting on immigration restrictions. We need to return America. If we return America to the original formula, open immigration, that will work against them because they will not have the power of the federal government to decide who gets in. Right now, they want to have liberals are not for open borders. Liberals are for closed borders and then amnesty, so that they have double control over it. They impose the laws, and then they're the grace givers. Our answer should be no. Neither the laws nor the grace. Everything should be in the hands of God. Let people free and take that area out of the prerogatives of the federal government. Yes, ma'am.
As somebody who's been at the epicenter of working with the influx of the children and the families, working at Sacred Heart Church in McAllen, I'm wondering, from your perspective, what indeed is our role, our responsibility as Christians as we watch the hundreds of people passing through the doors there at Sacred Heart and the appeals to us for our generosity and love. And yet these are hundreds and thousands of people coming forward to impact on our local economy as well as on our country. And what is our job, our responsibility as Christians?
Our biblical responsibility as Christians is to show, first of all, to support liberty and justice for all, no matter who they are, and second, to show mercy to those that are wicked and demand justice for those that are criminals. If you have somebody who is a criminal, you cannot define a criminal on the basis of their belonging to a group, whether it's immigrant group or a skin color group or any kind of thing, or national group and so on. You've got to take the person. If the person is a criminal, if you can prove that this guy is a criminal, then he's a criminal, turn him over to the authorities. But if this guy, his only crime is that he broke a law that shouldn't be there in the first place, no, he is not a criminal. You should help that guy as a Christian and use that to preach the gospel to him. It's not your job to. It's not. It's not your job to screen through the people. It's not even the federal government job. There's got to be, if there's a crime, there will be somebody to see the crime. It's not that you're screening the people. It's not your job. It's not our job to go around. There's nothing in the Bible to tell us that we go down the street and we look at people and start screening people, or somebody comes to us for help and we start screening people. Because this is not a biblical policy. This is not a biblical. God does not allow us to start prying into people's lives. We look at these people as somebody who needs help, and if they need help once and they come to us again for help, that means that between the first time and the second time they didn't learn to take care of themselves. Then we need to talk to them about work ethics, things that the gospel teaches, work ethics, entrepreneurship, future orientation, and so on, industriousness, and things like that. Hey, I was a missionary among the gypsies in Bulgaria. And let me tell you what. You can take the most savage tribes in the Amazonian rainforest, and they're not as pagan as European gypsies. I mean, you wouldn't believe what things happen among the European gypsy population, the European gypsy communities. And yet, we worked exactly the same way. We didn't have to institute any ghettos. We didn't have to put them enclosed in some quarters of their own, or institute a curfew or any immigration restrictions on them. We just work with them. And you know what? You preach to them the gospel, and it takes some time for any pagan, and eventually they get it. Because the Holy Spirit is working in these people. When you preach, the Holy Spirit does not allow that word to come back to you empty. And so the same thing with everybody. If they're a criminal, that's a different thing. You take an individual guy, you know he's a criminal, but you don't screen the person. You don't go to the person and see, oh, because he's an immigrant, there must be something, I must start screening the guy. No, you don't do that. We're Christians. We cannot read minds. Our job is to bring to them the gospel, and our job is, when there is an unjust government law, to oppose it. And say to the government, I'm sorry for the word, but I do believe it. Federal government, to hell with your double standards. I'm sorry, I know it sounds offensive, but I do believe it, and it's biblical. To hell with your double standards. I will do what the Bible tells me to do. This is what we need to do.
How about Romans 13?
What's that?
How about Romans 13?
What is Romans 13? I want to ask you about Romans 13 if you lived in the Soviet Union.
Right here, if I have to go ahead and take my Bible and start praying it.
Let me repeat what I said. I want to ask you about Romans 13 if you lived in the Soviet Union.
Okay. Is it wrong?
It is wrong to obey unjust laws of the government. It is righteous to oppose tyrants. Okay. And then it says in Romans 13 that there are specific reasons for why you pay taxes. So it is just as much a limitation on you as it is a limitation on the government. Romans 13 is not giving a free pass to the government to pass any laws, and it is not forcing you to obey any whim of a government bureaucrat. Romans 13 actually specifically says that the government must be servant of God and of the people. And if that civil government is not a servant of God, this is not the civil government that the Romans 13 talks about, and therefore you owe no allegiance to that civil government. And this is what the American Revolution was all about. You didn't hear me, my friend. You didn't hear what I said. Romans 13 sets standards for what a civil government is supposed to be. Legitimate civil government. It's got to be a servant of God, and it's got to work for the good of the people. Which means that if that civil government is not a servant of God, Romans 13 do not apply to you. You're not obligated to that civil government, and in fact what you need to do is stand against that civil government like our ancestors did and created this great country. Period. Civil disobedience to unjust laws, yes. It's good to do what God commands over what man commands. Yes, ma'am.
Well, the question has come up about screening of folks
Yes.
For health reasons. And just so that you know, the women and children that are passing through the McAllen sector and are being put on buses and planes to go all over the United States have not been screened in any way. They have no immunizations. They have no vaccinations. They've been here less than 48 hours. Just so that you know.
We're not
Okay.
back to the original laws. We're not back to the original idea. We need to return America back to her roots. And
Which
this
is what?
What's that?
Which is what?
Which is open immigration and, yes, quarantine.
Oh, but they're not. I'm just letting you know they are not being quarantined. You referred and you referenced Ellis.
Well,
They were there.
obviously our government is not doing its job. That's exactly what I've been saying.
Yeah.
No,
the whole system is broken because these folks are coming in. They are here.
Yeah.
Those are the folks that we are serving at Sacred Heart Church every day, have been doing it for the last 3 weeks or so.
Nice.
And they are not being detained in any way. The women and children are not being detained. Now, there's a whole slew of unaccompanied minors that we do not have access to, that I have no idea what's going to happen to them, because they are caught in that black hole of our immigration system.
See,
we don't know what's going to happen to them. Nobody, we as the
see, we have again this big problem of not seeing the real issue. The real issue is we have laws that basically the government has gotten out of its legitimate role into something that is not its role. Okay, and then we're looking just at the trees and we don't see the wood, the forest. And we don't see the forest. And yes, of course the civil government is not going to do its job. And the reason is it has self-consciously refused to do its jobs and have adopted other prerogatives that do not belong to it. Yes, the civil government does not care about quarantine now. Why? Because every political issue is what about? Control. Political control. So all they care is because quarantine does not give the government more political control, and that's the reason you don't have quarantine. But you know what? We have argued for more power to the federal government on this issue, and it's our fault. If we say, let's return to the biblical idea, then quarantine will be there, and these people will stay there for 2 weeks, and then will enter just like it was for so many years in America before 1921.
But that whole system is broken because these folks are going all over the country. Now
No, the system is broken because we have allowed the federal government to control the borders.
The fact that these folks are going all over the country.
No, you don't understand what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the system is broken because we have allowed the federal government to control the borders.
And
not because these folks are going anywhere. It's not in these folks. The system is broken because the federal government is allowed to control the borders. This is where you need to start. This is why the system is broken.
Okay. So we'll control the borders and we need to quarantine these folks here.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is the
I
only
wish that
thing
we
you need
could.
to...
If it was up to me, none of these folks would have gotten past Falfurrias. If it was up to me, that's where the...
Why not?
Because we could quarantine them here. We can't quarantine them in Baltimore or Delaware or California or wherever they've gone.
But as soon as you quarantine them,
they would have been taken care of here properly and completely, and received the adequate health care and screening that they needed to have before we just turned them loose.
Okay.
Now, we also keep alluding and kind of skirting around the issue of the criminal element. If you talk to any of the Customs and Border Control people, the police, the law enforcement people in this sector, their primary concern, and they're aware of the women and children, they see them every day, but their primary concern is what is driving this sudden exodus and migration of people. And their concern is that it is the criminal element in their country of origin that is driving this migration of people here. So what do we do about that? And you mentioned, that biblically that there is scripture that addresses what do we do with a criminal element. That would be a discussion that I would like to have, is like, okay, if the criminal element is driving this migration, and it's not economic, it's not social, it's not political, it's criminal, what do we do about that, and how do we protect ourselves against that, or do we protect ourselves against that?
What we do about that is probably stop wasting money on controlling immigration and redirect that money to controlling criminals.
The drugs that are coming into this country, and people in this country that are consuming the product.
Okay, I can see the benefit of spending a whole day, brainstorming and really hashing things out. But I think that the idea for today was, first of all, that we get the big picture, and then we get into the specifics of how to go about, actually implementing God's ways. We're going to ask one more question, and I'm going to ask it. So if anybody wants to talk to Bo, good luck. Try to catch him afterwards. Or he's very accessible, and you can get him, Bojidar Marinov, on Facebook and ask him any questions you want. Now, Bo, somebody told me to ask this question, so I'm going to ask it. Okay. Just in case, I know the answer because you've given it about 100 times already, but just in case you want to add anything. And after Bo finishes, Pastor Ron will give us some closure for today in prayer. Thank you so much for coming. I think that we can only grow as we learn God's Word better and better, and as the Holy Spirit, reveals to us all the truth that He wants us to know. So my question is this, and the lady here just began to allude to it. You might have a certain element, whether it's in Latin America or in China, whose interest it is to basically flood America with their constituency and overwhelm our nation. Take over. What do you do?
Yeah, the question, actually, the original question, I think, was, what if the Chinese government decides to, because I want a specific number. The Chinese government want to import, 40 million people here, and in order to change the political constituency of the United States, What's that? Al-Qaeda doesn't have 40 million people. Al-Qaeda is like, 1,000 people around the world. So they don't have 1 million people. But we're talking about, really big group of people and I was laughing when I saw that, because this only shows, a question like this only shows why we Christians are losing all credibility in the culture, because this question is so much in the la-la land of fantasy, and I'll explain to you why. Now, before we ask that question, my question is this. What if 300 million Americans tomorrow wake up and change their loyalty, not to the United States, but to the government of China? What are we going to do? This ain't going to happen, right? Because it never happened. Why? Because things don't change that quick. Because we don't live in a world where God allows such changes like this at the snap of a finger. Okay. But when we ask a question, when we pose an argument as Christians, we always need to think, and of course another answer would be political, like I said, free immigration for everybody, but limited political franchise. So if we really adopted the biblical principles, then these people wouldn't have any political franchise. So even if the Chinese government would ship 40 million people here, we have open borders, they ship 40 million people here, these people aren't going to be able to vote. But we have another problem, that when we go to the Bible, Jesus said every time you do something, like a wise man when he builds a tower, he counts the costs. And when you go to war, you count how many troops you have. So you always count the cost. And every time you ask a question, and like this guy that you mentioned, every time you pose an argument, you got to stop and think, is this argument realistic? Because if this argument doesn't include a cost-benefit analysis to see if this is realistic, the argument has absolutely no validity whatsoever, and that means that you're not thinking clearly. This is what the argument, this is what you need to stop. Now, let me ask you this. Can a government in the world today snap its fingers and transport 40 million people at zero cost anywhere in the world? It cannot transport 40 million people from one city to another at zero cost in their own land. What about transporting 40 million people from China to America? All right, let's see we open the borders. Let's see the realistic, if this is a realistic argument. Let's see and then the Chinese government decides to take over America and decides to ship 40 million immigrants here in America to change the political landscape. Okay, so first thing, and let's say in 5 years, like today's law, like the laws today, after they come here as immigrants, they can get political franchise. All right. First of all, the average cost for an immigrant, and I know it from my own experience, the average cost for an immigrant, it's less when you're a family, to start from his own country and to come to America and settle here is $5,000. And that's the lowest average cost. So 40 million people times $5,000 is how much? $200 billion. So the Chinese government, in order to do that, it will be $200 billion less. Okay, well, $200 billion is not that much. Okay, you know, it's not a big deal, you know, $200 billion. But then they have to stay in the United States and they have to survive for 5 years before they get American citizenship, right? Okay, so you think the Chinese government will have enough money to support them here at the cost of $50,000 a year? I mean, not 50, like $20,000 a year for them to survive here. The Chinese government will have to reach into its deep pockets of $4 trillion to make them live here for this time and be able to eventually to get American citizenship. So they have to train them to actually be able to work and survive in the United States. And you think education is at zero cost? So that means they have to start 12 years prior, train specifically people, and that they got to train them not to survive in China, but to survive in the United States, which means they need to train them English, American business, and all that stuff. Now, education in China, I checked last night, education in China for a child from 1st grade to 12th grade, and 12th grade is not enough many times, it costs the government $20,000. Times 40 million people, $800 billion. So you got $800 billion plus 12 years plus $200 billion to ship them over here. So now the Chinese government is 12 years back and $1 trillion back to be able to do that. It's a cost-benefit analysis. Okay, let's continue. It's not the end of it. Now, they got to stay in the United States and they got to work in the United States and produce in order to survive here in the United States. And guess what? There's no such thing as producing without actually giving added value to the economy. So you're in the economy here, and you produce, let's say, the lowest $50,000 a year, which means that in 1 year, 40 billion Chinese will produce $2 trillion of added value to the American economy, and over the course of 5 years before they get American citizenship, it will be $10 trillion of added value to the American economy. And we got that for free because they educated them. Okay, so we got $10 trillion. Meanwhile, you think it's not for China doesn't have the car. Well, they don't have these workers now. These are active workers. And by the way, they got to be young because you cannot wait for them. It's not going to be effective if you send them like in their 60s. You know, they got to be young. And then China is losing this $10 trillion. So now, let's say their productivity is lower. Let's say China is losing only $1 trillion. So now America is $10 trillion ahead. China is $2 trillion back and 12 years back. Okay, this is not the end. Well, I think at this point we got to encourage the Chinese government to train 40 million people and send them here. We'll be better off, right? Well, let's continue. I'm not finished yet. I'm not finished yet. The D-Day is there. All these Chinese get their American citizenship. They're on American soil, and they're going to vote. And we get to the quadrillion-dollar question for every communist government. How do you control the individual people? How do you control how they vote? These are smart people who came to the United States. They know the difference between what's there and what's here, and they are now American citizens. They're outside of the reach of that oppressive government. Why would they want to vote to get returned back to that misery? That's the question. Now, I can tell you, I don't know statistics about that, about this specific case, but I can tell you statistics that the Soviet secret services, their intelligence services actually, had about their own spies who they would send to the West. And these are not just your average Chinese Joe on the street. These are high-level Soviet spies that, they were specifically trained in their schools to come here and be spies in America. And the statistics are that after their first mission to the West, when they returned, 3/4 of them were now unreliable because of the difference they saw. They couldn't send them again. And these were not people, when they returned back, they would be living in misery and in some small apartments and so on. These were high-level people. And yet they returned back and they can't use them. 3 out of 4 they can't. What do you think is going to be the percentage for 40 million just average people? And how would the Chinese government, so after 5 years, $2 trillion back, $10 trillion more for the American economy, now the Chinese government got to pray to God that these 40 million people will actually vote the way their Chinese masters want it. You see how ridiculous this argument is. Now, if we're Christian guys, we're Christians, we cannot afford to come up with stupid arguments. We got to be the people who show an example of common sense to the world, not go around and think and talk like we can have a la-la land where the government snaps its fingers at transports 40 million people at no cost. We can't do that. Okay? And that's why we gotta before we pose an argument, stop and think. Is this a realistic argument, or is this an argument that is irrational and produced by irrational government propaganda? This is what we need to stop. I think if the Chinese government, we got to give the idea to the Chinese government, ship to us 40 million Chinese, educate them first so that they can survive in the States, ship them to us, and in 5 years, let's see